So I'm quite pleased with the way my robot's looking. I've got a body, I've got my arms and hands and little fingers, and he's got legs, and I've added some shadows onto the body and onto the legs just to give a bit more convincing sort of reality to it. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add some eyes and a mouth into this head section. I'm also going to just darken up some of the head, and I'll show you how to do that selectively in this tutorial. I've made a little bit of preparation in terms of choosing some of the parts I'm going to use for my eyes and mouth, etc. This is the object I'm going to use for eyes. A little bit out of focus, but that's not a huge problem. I like this idea of this sort of camera lens being one of the eyes. Now I need to make a circular selection that's going to select just this inside part of the lens. Now making a circular selection using the elliptical marquee tool, as we did with this screw, it can be a bit tricky just getting you the exact right size. So I'll show you how you can make that easier. So let's just drag it off that tab. I'm just going to put in a couple of guidelines to help me. So I'm going to just turn on view. I'm going to show the rulers, and I'm just going to click in here and drag down to put a guideline at the top. So it's just this intersection of the lens I want. So from about there, and I'm going to do one at the bottom. So about there. So my circle wants to be that size. So when I use my selection tool now, it actually doesn't matter where I select start on the image, but as long as I've lined up with the top guideline. So let's line up there. Hold the shift key to make a circle, drag down, and just make sure the bottom of my circle just touches that guideline. Bingo. And there I've made my selection, which is pretty much the exact size I need. So let's copy, let's pop onto the robot, let's paste it. There's an enormous big circle, and let's pop him up right above the head, and let's just resize it because it wants to be an awful lot smaller. Let's put it on the, there we go. And let's zoom in, because we're just thinking about the head section. 100% is fine. So there's an eye, it's going to be here. Okay, and let's name it eye. So that's better. Okay. So there's the eye. Eye. And let's make another one over here. Now, okay, it's starting to look okay. The thing with eyes is, think about human eyes, they are actually set inside the skull. So there's effectively a hole in the skull and the eye sits behind it. So what I would quite like to do is to have a hole cut in the actual head shape here. So let's select the head and let's make a hole. So let's make my rectangular ellipse tool and let's just make a hole that's roughly, it needs to be just a little bit smaller than the lens. So let's just make a hole about that size. Doesn't matter if it is bigger because we can resize the eye. And I want to make a hole about there. So what I'm going to do is let's just hide the eye layers for now. I'm on the head layer. Let's pop a hole through there. And let's make another one over here. So those are my two eye sockets. Okay, let's deselect. Now, what I find is the edge of that is quite a sharp edge, so I'm just going to blur that edge. I'm going to use this tool here, which is the blur tool, and on the head layer I'm just going to go around this edge and just blur it off, just touching the actual object itself. So I'm just blurring that edge so that you can just see how that's blurring that edge there. Just softens that edge. Do the same thing on this side. Just going to soften that edge. Missed a bit there. Okay, so I've just blurred that edge, just softens it up. And that's going to look a bit more convincing when we put the eye in behind. So let's now unhide. Yeah. And that layer needs to go above the two eyes. Okay, so let's take eye copy, which is this one. Needs to just be a fraction bigger. There we go. Sorted. That one, again, just a fraction bigger. There. Now again, I'm just going to use on those eyes, I'm going to use the burn tool just, let's make this much smaller, just to darken up a little bit of that there, just around the edge. And do the same thing on the other one, a little bit of darkening just around the edge of it. Okay. So I've got my eyes now in their sockets. There we go. Eyes in their sockets. And that's looking quite nice, isn't it? So let's think about a mouth now. I want the mouth, again, is going to be an opening in the face. So let's cut an opening in the face. I'm just going to cut a rectangular selection. It's going to have a mouth which is that kind of size. Let's punch that hole on the head layer. Punch the hole through. Let's deselect that. Again, let's just soften that edge. Blur tool. Let's just blur the edge of that mouth. That's going to make that a bit more convincing, okay? Now, I quite like the idea that he's going to have some sort of mechanical bits inside his mouth. He's going to have teeth as well, but I quite like the idea of some sort of mechanical parts behind here. So I've chosen this object, and I'm just going to choose this part here. Copy that. And I'm going to paste here, and it's way too big. So let's just zoom out and resize that. So that's going to be in the mouth behind all that. There we go. Let's change the layer order and let's pop it behind the head so you can see now. I can start to see those gear workings and things inside his mouth. Yeah, that's the idea. Let's zoom in again so we can see that a bit more detail. Now obviously it is much too detailed, much too light actually, so I'm going to darken that up. I could use the dodge and burn tool, there we are, the burn tool to darken, but what I'm actually just going to darken the whole thing. So let's just do image and adjustments, and I'm going to do levels, and I'm going to, here I've got my highlights, yeah, my midtones, darkening, and my darks, my shadows, darken the shadows. Let's darken that whole thing, because that would be inside his mouth, okay, yeah. And then let's just do a little bit more burning, just on that edge there. Okay, let's call that inside mouth. Now I'm going to pop some teeth on here, and I had my teeth from here, and I've prepared this. I've just taken these two sections of teeth. So this section I'm going to drag on here. Again, it's really large, so let's just zoom out, flip this around, resize. Well, you see the teeth, just, you see the idea there, so the teeth are going to be sitting in like that. A bit smaller, like so. Again, let's zoom in so let's see how that looks. So he's got some upper teeth, and then he's going to have, so we can do that there. So there's the upper set of teeth, And he's going to have some lower teeth. I'm going to use these lighter ones to the lower. So those are the lower teeth. Let's pull those on. Let's flip them around. Let's resize. The reason I chose the lighter ones for the bottom is because if you think of the shadow that might be cast by this top part of the head, the lower teeth might be a bit lighter. So that's why I've chosen two different tones of teeth. Let's pop that there. Okay, let's just zoom in. And what I might do is just with the blur tool again, just blur the edges of those teeth slightly. It's not quite so sharp. So that's lower teeth. Keep reminding ourselves on what's what. And now I've forgotten which one it is. That must be the upper teeth. There we are. That's if I spell right. Upper teeth. Upper. Again, blur tool, slightly blurring the edges of there. And I'm going to take my inside mouth and I'm going to make it even darker. I think it's not quite dark enough still. I just want to have just a hint of what's inside there. Okay, and that's his mouth opening with his teeth. And because we've got that as a hole in the head and those layers are behind the teeth and the inside mouth are behind, the layers behind the opening is making that more more believable as a mouth. The last touch I'm going to do is to just add a bit of shadowing, a bit of burning, so dodging in the inside the head here, just to sort of darken up the shadow. Now I want to be careful with this because I only want to affect what's inside, what would be inside the hood. So I'm going to make a selection. I'm going to choose my polygonal lasso tool. Let's do it on the head layer. Here we are. So I'm going to go from here. Let's just zoom in one more time so I can see that even bigger. Resize. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take this section here. So from here, just missed, there we go. Let's do it there. All the way across here, down to here, and just a few clicks here to slide there, and I'm going to go to there, and I'm trying to think of sort of 3 dimensions. I'm not worried too much about this bottom section. It's more towards the top that I'm worried about, so I'm making that selection. Okay, so any tool that I use as a brush or to dodge or burn, it's only going to affect inside the selection area. So let's choose my burn tool here. Let's make much bigger. Full softness. And I'm going to just take on mid-tones and let's just start to brush across. Can you see how that's just starting to darken up just the inside? And you see it's not affecting anything outside of. I'm just darkening up there. So I've got a stronger shadow inside the hood. And let's deselect, select, deselect. And you see how that's a bit nicer as stronger shadow underneath the hood. Yeah. So now I think I've got a robot that's quite convincing.